My mom didn't knock. She never does. She just barged into my apartment like she owned the place, my front door slamming into the wall so hard the picture frame beside it rattled. And behind her, like some smug little prince, was my younger brother Daniel, scrolling on his phone, not even bothering to look up. "Wow," Mom announced loud enough for the whole hallway to hear. "So this is where all my money went. Fancy." It took me half a second to realize what she really meant. Not her money. Mine. She'd found out my salary. She'd found out, and instead of calling to say she was proud of me, she showed up with her spoiled, jobless son and said, "We need to talk about how you're going to do the right thing and give back to your family, starting with putting your brother on your payroll." If you've ever had the person who raised you treat you like an ATM while worshiping a grown child who does nothing, you know exactly how that sentence feels. It's like someone reached into your chest, grabbed your lungs and squeezed, hit like if you believe karma never misses. Because that day, standing in my own doorway, I had no idea that this was the beginning of the end. Not for me. For them. My name is Nadia. I'm 32, a project coordinator for a medical supply company, and until about 6 months ago, my entire life revolved around one goal: make my mother proud. We grew up in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a laundromat. The constant hum of machines and the smell of detergent are basically the soundtrack and scent of my childhood. Dad left when I was 9. I still remember the sound of their fighting more than I remember his voice. After he disappeared, Mom's favorite line became, "I sacrificed everything for you two. Everything." You two was me and Daniel, younger by 4 years. The golden child from the moment he was born. I was the helper, the second parent, the one who learned to cook because Mom worked double shifts, the one who walked him to school, did his homework with him, lied for him when he skipped class. And every time I tried to show Mom a good grade, a certificate, anything, she'd just say, "That's what you're supposed to do, Nadia." But when Daniel passed a test he barely studied for, "That's my boy, so smart, just like his father. He's going to be someone big one day." The tension didn't start when I got my job. It started way before. It started when I was 16 and working my first part-time cashier job, and Mom borrowed my whole paycheck to help with rent and never gave it back. It started when I got a scholarship to college, and she still made me feel guilty for moving out. "You're just going to abandon your mother after everything I've done?" So I stayed nearby. I visited every weekend. I sent money whenever she hinted at needing help. And somewhere along the line, the roles reversed. I wasn't the child she cared about. I was the resource she depended on. Daniel? He didn't finish community college. He worked here and there. Delivery, sales, a few months at a car dealership. But nothing lasted. Mom always had an excuse ready. He's still figuring it out. He just hasn't found his passion. Not everyone is built for books like you. Books like you. Like being responsible was some weird genetic defect. For years I swallowed it, the favoritism, the constant guilt, the little comments at family gatherings. "Daniel is going to open a business someday, you'll see." And Nadia? Well, she's responsible. She helps out where she can. Helps out where she can. As if where she can didn't mean paying their electric bill 3 times in 1 year. As if it didn't mean covering Daniel's traffic ticket so he wouldn't lose his license. As if it didn't mean buying groceries even when my own pantry was nearly empty. But I kept going. Because that's what good daughters do, right? They carry the whole family on their back and apologize when their knees buckle. Everything changed the day Human Resources accidentally CC'd my personal email with a confirmation of my raise. My salary. Black and white. Clear as day. A number I never thought I'd see in my life. It wasn't millionaire money, but it was enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to plan. Enough to finally think, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I did something right. I remember staring at that email in awe, then forwarding it to myself so I could look at it over and over. I didn't tell Mom, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted, for once, to enjoy something for myself. Except secrets don't stay secrets in families like mine. A week later, my cousin Angela, who works as a temp at my company, called me. "Hey, Nad. Look, I thought you knew, but your mom likes to brag, so I thought she already..." "Knew what?" "She came by the office to bring Daniel lunch. They stopped at the front desk and she kept asking what department you were in. Someone mentioned you got a raise. I think she heard the number." I froze. "You sure?" Angela sighed. She said, and I quote, "That girl better remember who fed her growing up." I'm sorry, Nadia." I thanked her and hung up, feeling that old familiar heaviness settle on my shoulders. That night, I barely slept. Part of me hoped Angela was wrong, that maybe Mom didn't fully understand. Another part of me, the realistic part, knew exactly what was coming. What I didn't expect was how fast it would happen. Which brings us back to my front door slamming open. I stepped aside because the door was literally shoved inward. If I didn't move, it would have hit me. "Hi, Mom," I managed, my voice tight. "You know, some people knock." She brushed past me like I was a coat rack. "Some people don't hide things from their family," she snapped, eyes sweeping over my living room like she was appraising it. "Look at this, Daniel. She's living like a queen while we're struggling." My apartment is a small one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a brick building. Beige walls, a thrifted couch with a new cover, a second-hand coffee table I sanded and painted myself. Plants in the window because they were cheaper than art and made me feel like I had something alive that didn't take and take and take. Queen? Hardly. Daniel finally looked up from his phone, wearing joggers, expensive sneakers, and a brand-name hoodie I knew Mom couldn't afford. "Yo, Nod," he said, barely glancing around. "This is nice." He said it with that tone people use when they mean, "You don't deserve this." My jaw tightened. "What's going on?" Mom turned to me, one hand on her hip, the other clutching her purse like it contained a script she'd rehearsed already. "What's going on," she said, "is that I found out how much money you're making now. And I'm disappointed, Nadia." Of everything she could have said, that was the one that sliced the deepest. "Disappointed?" I repeated. "Because I got a raise?" "Because you didn't think to help your family," she shot back, her voice rising. "All those times I told you I was behind on rent, all those times your brother needed support, you said you're doing your best. Meanwhile, you're sitting on all this." She swept her hand around, as if my IKEA bookshelf was evidence in a trial. Daniel chimed in. "You said you couldn't loan me money for my business idea 'cause you were barely getting by. That was a lie, huh?" My chest burned. I wasn't lying. That was before the raise. Mom scoffed. "You think I'm stupid? You think this salary just happened overnight? You've been hiding from us, living your little secret life while we struggle." "I've been sending you money for years," I said, my voice shaking. "Covering bills, buying groceries. And who raised you so you could get that job in the first place?" She cut in. "Who sacrificed?" There it was, the word she loved more than any compliment. Sacrifice. Behind her, in the open doorway, Mrs. Patel from next door pretended not to listen while very obviously listening, her laundry basket balanced on her hip. Great. An audience. Mom noticed too because she turned slightly, projecting her voice louder. "I broke my back to give you a life," she said, eyes gleaming with something like triumph. "And now what? You think you're too good for your own mother?" I could feel my neighbors watching, the hall echo carrying every word. Heat crawled up my neck, settling in my cheeks. "Can we talk about this inside, without yelling?" I asked quietly. She pushed past me into the living room. "Fine, but this is overdue." Daniel followed, plopping down on my couch, man-spreading like he'd paid for it. I closed the door, my hands trembling. "Okay," I said slowly. "What do you want?" Mom turned to me, smile as thin and sharp as the edge of a knife. "We decided that now that you're making real money, it's time you stepped up. You're going to help pay off my debts." "Your debts?" I repeated. "Credit cards, loans, rent I owe," she rattled off like a grocery list. "And Daniel needs $10,000 to start his business." I stared at her. $10,000? For what business? Daniel shrugged, as if details were beneath him. I told you before, online stuff, reselling, dropshipping. There's this course I want to buy. It's legit. I could be making 6 figures in a few months. You just gotta invest in your family. My laugh came out sharp and hollow. You want me to pay your debts and give him $10,000, just like that? Mom crossed her arms. You owe us, Nadia. It was like getting slapped over and over with every word. Debt. Owe. Disappointed. Hiding. All while Daniel sat there, scrolling again. Not a single hint of shame. I swallowed hard. I don't owe you my entire salary because I worked hard and got a raise. You wouldn't have anything if it weren't for me, Mom snapped. I am your mother. There's no your money and my money. It's our money. And your brother deserves a chance. And I don't, I whispered. Her face flickered for a second, but she recovered quickly. You had your chance. You got your degree, your job. Because I worked, I interrupted, the words spilling before I could stop them. I took out loans, I studied, I didn't go out, I didn't party. I did everything you asked, and it was never enough. She stepped closer, her finger jabbing the air near my face. Don't you dare raise your voice at me. Don't forget who you're talking to. In that moment, I felt like I was 16 again, cowering in the kitchen after she chewed me out for asking if I could keep $10 from my paycheck. My eyes burned, but I refused to let the tears fall. Look, Daniel said lazily, why are you being difficult? You're not even married, you don't have kids. What else are you spending it on? The casual cruelty of that sentence hit harder than I expected. There it was, the unspoken judgment. At 32, living alone, no husband, no children, my money, my life, my achievements were all viewed as spare, extra, available. My throat tightened. My life is not a communal fund. I'm already helping. Mom rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, please, a couple hundred here and there? That's nothing compared to what we need. You have so much more now. It's your turn to carry the real weight. Daniel is going to make us all proud one day, but he needs support to get there. So did I whispered. I needed support too. She looked at me like I'd spoken in another language. You're the strong one. You don't need it. I realized then that, in her mind, strong meant available to be used. The conversation spiraled. She listed every sacrifice she'd ever made. Daniel chimed in with passive-aggressive comments like, you act like I've never worked a day in my life, and you're so ungrateful. In the middle of it, my phone dinged with a notification from my banking app. I'd set it up to send me a recap of my monthly spending and savings. I glanced at it, mostly to ground myself. Savings goal. 64% reached. I'd been trying to save for a tiny condo, a place that smelled like my own choices, not laundry detergent and resentment. Mom saw the notification and snatched the phone from my hand before I could lock it. Mom! I lunged forward, but she held it away, her thumb somehow nailing the correct gesture to open my financial summary. She whistled. Look at this, she said, turning the screen to Daniel. You see how much she has saved? And she's telling us she can't help. Daniel leaned in and his eyebrows shot up. Damn, Nod, you could have put me on long time ago. Give it back, I said, my voice low. Mom ignored me. How much is in your savings? I didn't answer. She clicked around until she found the exact number. Then, with all the self-righteousness of a judge, she announced, You have enough to clear all my debt and give your brother what he needs. You've just been selfish. Selfish. That did it. That was the word that lit the match. Because for 32 years, I had bent myself into shapes so small I barely existed outside of what she needed. I had worked jobs I hated. I had skipped meals so I could send her money. I had ignored my own exhaustion, my own dreams, my own loneliness, so she wouldn't have to feel hers. And now, standing in my own apartment, with witnesses in the hallway and her voice raised high, she called me selfish. You know what? Mom said, handing me back my phone like she was granting a favor. We're not leaving until we sort this out. You're going to transfer something now. I already wrote down the amounts." She started rifling through her purse, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper. "We'll figure out the rest later. You can cut back on your luxury nonsense." "Luxury," I repeated, looking around at my thrifted furniture and homemade curtains. Even my coffee table still had sanding marks. She nodded. "All this. You don't need it. Family comes first. Always." Family comes first. Funny how that never applied when I needed something. I felt something inside me click, not break. Breaking implies weakness. This felt sharp, precise, like a lock sliding open. I stopped shaking. My breathing slowed. The noise around me faded into a dull hum, like someone had just turned the volume down on the chaos. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, not just as the woman who raised me, but as a person who had made choices, who had favorites, who benefited enormously from me never questioning anything. Then I looked at Daniel. In his expensive hoodie, bought with whose money I didn't even want to think about, lounging on my couch like he owned it, already mentally spending money he hadn't earned. And I realized I was done. Done being the responsible one who also had to be the silent one. Done being the bank with no boundaries. Done begging to be seen as something other than a resource. I straightened my shoulders. "You need to leave," Mom's head snapped up. "What did you say?" "You need to leave," I repeated, this time steady. "Both of you." Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, come on, Nad, stop being dramatic." My mother's eyes narrowed. "Don't talk to me like that. This is not a request. I am your mother." "And I am an adult," I said. "An adult who pays for this apartment, which gives me the right to ask people to leave it." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're really going to throw your own family out?" "I'm asking you to respect my boundaries," I replied. "I will continue to help in reasonable ways, but I am not clearing your debts. I am not giving Daniel $10,000 for a business he can't explain. I am not your lifeline. I am not his investor." Silence fell for a beat. Then she exploded. The yelling got louder, uglier. She called me ungrateful, heartless, arrogant. She accused me of thinking I was better than them. She brought up every childhood slight, every moment she'd bailed me out of something minor, magnified to make it sound like I'd been a walking disaster. Daniel chimed in with, "You know what, Mom? Just let her be. When she's old and alone, don't come calling us then," like he was the injured party. And there it was, the threat, the promise that my punishment for not handing over my life savings would be abandonment when I needed them. I didn't kick them out physically. I didn't have the heart to drag my own mother to the door, but I held firm. After an hour of shouting and guilt-tripping that didn't budge me, she stormed out, shouting over her shoulder, "Don't call me when you realize what you've done." Daniel glared at me on his way out. "You'll regret this." The door slammed, the walls shook, and I broke. I slid down the wall, buried my face in my hands, and sobbed until there was nothing left. It wasn't just that fight. It was every fight, every dismissal, every moment of invisibility, every time I'd swallowed my own hurt for the sake of peace. That was the moment I stopped being the victim, I would tell myself later. But right then, on that floor, I only felt hollow. The next day, Mom started. She called my aunt, my uncle, my grandfather, my cousins, anyone with our last name and a phone number. She told them her version of the story, where I was a greedy, heartless daughter who refused to help her aging mother and struggling brother while sitting on a fortune. My phone lit up with calls and messages. "How could you do this to your mother? She gave everything for you, Nadia. You're really going to let your brother sink? Money changes people." I tried to explain. Some listened, most didn't. It was easier to stick with the narrative they'd heard their whole lives. Mom, the martyr, me, the strong one who didn't need anything. Daniel, the boy with so much potential, who just needed one more chance. The humiliation wasn't just in the words, it was in how fast they believed her. At work, things stayed normal, thank God, but at home, my phone became a weapon. I started putting it on Do Not Disturb just to breathe. Then the social media posts started. I don't know when my mother discovered Facebook beyond posting birthday wishes, but apparently she'd leveled up. She didn't mention my name directly, but the posts were obvious. Imagine raising a child alone, sacrificing everything, and when they make it, they forget you. Some people forget where they came from, but God sees everything. A mother's tears are powerful. God will fight for me. Her friends and extended family commented, "So sorry, sis. God will punish ungrateful children. Stay strong. You did your best." And there, in the likes, was Daniel. Meanwhile, Mom stopped taking my calls. When I tried to drop by with groceries like I'd been doing every other Sunday, she left the chain on the door and said through the crack, "We don't need handouts from you. Go help yourself." Daniel called once, not to reconcile, to lecture. "You really messed up, Nod. Mom's been crying nonstop. You know her blood pressure is high, right? You're stressing her out." "I am not responsible for her decision to manipulate everyone," I said calmly. "Wow," he replied. "You're really gone, huh? Money changed you." The irony almost made me laugh. Almost. That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the soft whir of my fan barely masking the replay of every conversation in my head. The shame wasn't just external, it had started seeping inward. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I should just give them what they wanted. 10,000 wasn't everything. My savings could recover eventually. But then I pictured my mom, my brother, and all those comments about how God would punish ungrateful children while conveniently ignoring lazy, entitled adults. And then I pictured myself at 42, 52, still paying their debts, still funding Daniel's business ideas, still trying to buy my own life with whatever scraps were left. I sat up. No more. If I kept going like this, I wasn't just enabling them. I was betraying myself. Revenge didn't start as some grand cinematic plan. It started as a small, defiant whisper in my own head. They used my silence against me. Let's see what happens when I start telling the truth. I knew my mother's weakness. It wasn't money. It wasn't even Daniel. It was image. She thrived on being the long-suffering single mother in everyone's eyes. The saint, the warrior, the one who did it all alone. She needed people to see her as the hero, to be the center of sympathy. And Daniel's weakness? Ego. He lived off validation, likes, comments, admiration for plans he hadn't even started. The idea of being exposed as lazy, entitled, and irresponsible would crush him more than any unpaid bill. So I stopped thinking like the hurt daughter. I started thinking like someone planning a controlled demolition. Not to physically hurt them. Never that. But to dismantle the structure they'd built on lies and emotional blackmail, brick by brick, so that the rubble left behind was simply the truth. The first thing I did was gather proof. I went through years of text messages and screenshots. Times my mom asked for just a little help, and I sent $200, $300. Receipts for the traffic ticket I paid for Daniel. The time he borrowed $500 and never paid it back. The electric bill I covered last winter. The grocery orders I sent to their address. Dates, amounts, reasons. It made me sick, seeing it all laid out like that. Not just because of the money, but because I could see the pattern. Every time I tried to say no, there was a guilt trip waiting. I guess we'll just go without. It's okay, I'll figure it out. I don't want to stress you, but I have no one else. No one else. Except she did. She had Daniel, she had siblings, she had friends. But I was the only one she'd successfully convinced it was my job to save her. I printed it all, old school, hard copies, highlighted the dates and totals. I made a simple spreadsheet too, not to share, just to see for myself. Over 5 years, I had given them more than enough to buy a used car or start an actual business. Then I pulled copies of my student loan statements showing I was still paying off my own debts while helping with theirs. Next, I dug up the last conversation where I'd asked Daniel about his business plan, and he'd responded with, "I'll figure it out when I get the money." I'd saved it because something about that sentence had bothered me even then. All of this went into a neat folder. I labeled it, in big bold letters, for when they say I did nothing. The next step was subtle. I stopped sending money, entirely. No explanation. No small help transfers, just to keep the peace. When Mom texted, "Need a little help this month, just $100, I'll pay you back," I replied, "I can't send any more money. I need to focus on my own financial stability. I've helped as much as I can." She left it on read. Then came a string of message bubbles changing from gray to blue as she typed, stopped, typed again. Finally, wow. After everything I did, God is watching. I didn't respond. When my aunt called to scold me, I said, far more calmly than I felt, "I've been helping for years. I need to set boundaries now." "Boundaries?" she echoed like it was a slur. "With your mother? She's heartbroken." "I'm heartbroken too," I replied. "You just never noticed." I let the gossip swirl. I let the accusations sit. I didn't defend myself publicly. Not yet. Wave 1 of revenge wasn't about exposure. It was about silence. The kind of silence that forces manipulators to show their hands more desperately when their usual tactics stop working. Within a month, the calls escalated. Mom went from guilt to anger to begging and back again. "You think you can just abandon us? You're making me look like a fool. We're going to lose the apartment. You must have someone else you're giving your money to. Who is it?" That last one startled me, as if there had to be some rival for my loyalty. It didn't occur to her that I might just want to take care of myself. At the same time, I started therapy. It took 3 weeks to get an appointment at a community mental health center, but when I finally sat across from a woman with kind eyes and a notebook, I felt something unclench in my chest. "I don't know if I'm overreacting," I began. And from there, 32 years poured out in 90 minutes. She listened. She didn't look away. She didn't tell me I was ungrateful. "Your mother sounds like she's relied on you in ways that aren't appropriate for a parent-child relationship," she said gently. "That's called parentification. And what you're describing now is financial abuse and emotional manipulation." The words hit like a series of small explosions. Not because they were shocking, but because they made sense. They named something I'd always felt, but never identified. Abuse, manipulation, parentification. By the time I left, we had a plan, not just to survive the fallout, but to reclaim my life. Therapy wasn't the revenge, it was my armor, so that when the revenge began, I wouldn't crumble under my own guilt. Wave 1 ended with what looked, from the outside, like withdrawal. I saw my mother and brother less. I answered fewer calls. I stopped explaining myself. But inside, gears were turning. I was learning to separate what was mine from what they had convinced me belonged to them. Wave 2 was exposure. Not on social media, not in some dramatic public showdown. At least not at first. It started with the family group chat. My family has a giant WhatsApp group with uncles, aunts, cousins, and random extended relatives from 3 different countries. For months, I had watched messages pile up, most of them from Mom, sprinkled with Bible verses and veiled posts about ungrateful children. One Saturday afternoon, after yet another round of, "Pray for me, I am so stressed," I opened the chat, took a deep breath, and typed, "I've been quiet for a long time, but I think it's time I share my side, since my name is being discussed in this family." The typing indicator exploded. People were watching. Before anyone could respond, I started uploading. First, a polite message. "I love my mother and brother. I always have. That's why for the past 5 years, I have been sending money regularly to help with bills, emergencies, and debts. I never bragged about it because I thought that's what family does. But since my character is being questioned, here are some details." Then I attached screenshots. Transfers with captions like Mom's electric bill, rent help, groceries, Daniel's ticket. Dates spanning years. I did not comment on each screenshot. I let them speak. Then I sent one more message. I am still paying off my own student loans. I have worked full-time since I was 18. I have no husband, no second income, no one helping me. I am proud of what I've been able to do, but I cannot continue to carry our household alone. I did not abandon anyone. I said no for the first time in decades. I put my phone down and went to wash dishes, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped a glass. When I came back 10 minutes later, the chat was full. Nadia, we didn't know. This is a lot of money. Why didn't your mother tell us she was getting help from you? Wow. And then, finally, from my mother, this is disrespectful. You don't air family business like this. I stared at her message, my heart pounding. I took a breath and replied, You did when you accused me publicly. I'm just adding context. Silence from her. But private messages started pouring in, cousins apologizing, an aunt admitting, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have judged you without asking your side. Even my grandfather sent a voice note, his voice rough with age. You're a good girl, Nadia. You've always worked hard. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of setting limits. It wasn't everyone. Some stayed quiet. Some probably still thought I was wrong. But the narrative had cracked. My mother could no longer play the martyr without people remembering those screenshots. That was wave 2. Exposure of the truth. Wave 3 was social reversal. It happened gradually. At church, a place Mom loved to parade her struggle in, people started approaching me with different eyes. Not just as the successful daughter, but as someone they'd misjudged. One Sunday after service, the pastor's wife pulled me aside. Your mother asked us to pray for her situation with you, she said softly. Of course she did. I braced myself. But then I saw that message in the family chat, she continued. Nadia, you've been very generous. You're not a bad daughter for needing balance. I swallowed hard. Thank you, I whispered, that lump in my throat returning for the 1,000th time. Word got around, not because I spread it, but because that's what families do. They talk. Except now, when my mother tried to cry about how abandoned she was, some people gently asked, But didn't Nadia help you for years? When Daniel swaggered into gatherings with new shoes or a fresh haircut, a cousin would raise an eyebrow and say, So, bro, what do you do these days? The old sympathy they used to get by default started drying up. Little by little, people stopped enabling their narrative and started questioning it. I thought that might be enough. But then came the ultimatum. Mom called late one night, her voice sharp. I heard what you did, she said. I told the truth, I replied. You made me look like a beggar in front of everyone, she hissed. Your own mother. Do you know how humiliating that is? I bit back the urge to say, Now you know how it feels. Instead, I said, I showed them what I've actually done. You left that part out. You put a roof over my head and food in my mouth, she snapped. Now you want credit? I want accuracy, I said. She scoffed. Well, since you want to make everything official and public, let me return the favor. You have 1 week to decide if you're going to help us, really help us, or you can forget about this family. I'll tell everyone you chose money over blood. It should have shattered me. Part of me wanted to drive over, shove cash in her hands, and beg her not to make good on that threat. But another part, the part fortified by therapy, by bank statements, by finally seeing the pattern, spoke louder. This isn't a negotiation, I said quietly. I'm not choosing money over family. I'm choosing my mental health over being used. If that means you cut me off, that's your choice. She hung up on me. That could have been the end. But the last wave of revenge, the ultimate downfall, came from a direction I didn't plan. It came from Daniel. One of my cousins, Malik, runs a small logistics business. A few months earlier, my mom had been begging him to give Daniel a job. At the time, Malik had been hesitant. I've heard he doesn't last long in jobs, he'd told me privately. But your mom is insistent. I might give him a trial. I hadn't weighed in. I didn't want to speak against my brother's opportunities, even if I doubted his work ethic. Now, though, things were different. One afternoon, Malik called me, Hey, Nad, got a question for you. Sure. Did you pay for Daniel's last car? I blinked. What? No? Why? He came to me 2 months ago asking for an advance on his salary, Malik explained. Said he needed to make a car payment. Told me he'd been helping your mom with rent too since you refused to contribute. I let out a slow breath. That's not true. I haven't paid for his car, and I helped with rent for years before I stopped. That's what I thought, Malik murmured. Because your screenshots, they told a different story. I could hear typing in the background, the clack of keys. I've been noticing some discrepancies with our inventory, he continued. Packages missing, routes taking longer than they should. I checked the logs. Guess whose name keeps popping up? My stomach dropped. Daniel? Yeah, he confirmed. I was giving him a chance, for your sake, and Auntie's. But he's been sloppy. And now I'm hearing he's out here telling people he's supporting your mom because you abandoned her, while also taking advances and not showing up on time. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course he'd leverage my supposed abandonment for sympathy and cash. What are you going to do? I asked. Malik sighed. Handle it. But I wanted you to know. Because the story your mom and Daniel are telling doesn't just hurt you, it's starting to hurt other people too. And I'm not playing along. What do you mean? He hesitated. I'm calling a family meeting. The words startled me. Our family didn't really do meetings, just chaotic gatherings where everyone talked over each other. What for? To set the record straight, he said simply. I hadn't planned this. This wasn't part of any revenge blueprint. But I realized, with a weird mix of dread and relief, that this might be the final wave I'd been unconsciously walking toward. The meeting was set for a Sunday afternoon in my grandfather's living room. When I arrived, the house was already buzzing. Aunties in the kitchen, cousins in the hallway, the smell of stew and rice in the air. My mother sat on the couch, eyes red like she'd been crying. Daniel next to her, arms folded. As I walked in, conversations quieted. All eyes turned to me. It was like being summoned to a trial where everyone already knew your history. My grandfather, old but still sharp, sat in his armchair at the center of the room like a judge. Malik stood near him, a folder in his hand. Nadia, Grandpa said, nodding. Sit. I squeezed into a chair at the end of the coffee table, my heart pounding. I could feel my mother's glare burning into the side of my face. Malik cleared his throat. Thank you for coming, everyone. I know we're all busy. But there's been tension in this family for months now, and it's affecting more than just feelings. It's affecting business, trust, reputation. He glanced at me briefly, then at my mother. Auntie, you've told us that Nadia abandoned you, he said respectfully. That she refused to help you while she became successful. Yes, my mother replied, voice trembling with the effort of sounding both fragile and righteous. I don't like talking about it, but yes. And Daniel, Malik said, turning to my brother, you've told people you're carrying the financial burden now, that you took on car payments and bills because your sister refused. Daniel shrugged. Someone had to step up. Malik nodded slowly. Right. So, before we go further, I want to make sure we're all working with the same information. He opened the folder and pulled out printed copies of the screenshots I'd sent to the group chat. My stomach twisted. I hadn't expected him to bring those. These are transfers from Nadia to Auntie and Daniel spanning several years, he said. Thousands of dollars. Bills, tickets, rent, groceries. Is this accurate, Nadia? I swallowed. Yes. He turned to my mother. Auntie? Her jaw clenched. I didn't ask her to show everyone that. That's not what I asked, Malik said gently but firmly. Are these transfers real? She hesitated so long everyone noticed. Finally she muttered, yes. But that's what you do for family. Agreed, Malik said. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help. But there is something wrong with pretending she never helped while telling everyone she abandoned you. Murmurs rippled through the room. Grandpa leaned forward. Is that true? He asked my mother. Did you tell people Nadia stopped helping you without saying how much she already had? My mother's control slipped. Why should that matter? She turned her back on us when she got more money. After everything I sacrificed, there it was again. That word. Malik didn't flinch. We all know you sacrificed, Auntie. No one denies that. But sacrifice doesn't mean you get to rewrite history. He pulled out another set of papers, and my heart sank when I saw my name again. This time on the student loan statements I'd given him privately after he'd asked to understand my situation better. This is Nadia's current debt, he said. She's still paying for her education. So while she's been sending money home, she's also carrying her own financial burden. Yet the story we've been hearing is that she's selfish, greedy, and abandoned her family. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. And then there's Daniel, Malik continued. My brother shifted in his seat, his posture suddenly defensive. What about me? Malik picked up another paper. You've been working for my company for the past few months, right? Yeah, Daniel said. You told me you'd give me a chance. And I did, Malik replied. But I also started noticing missing packages, delays in routes, and you asking for advances on your salary. When I asked why, you told me you were using the money to help your mother because Nadia refused. Everyone's eyes swung to Daniel. My mother gasped. He's been helping with rent and bills, she said. What's wrong with that? The problem, Malik said, voice calm as a blade, is that the numbers don't add up. The advances you took didn't go to rent. They went to your car, I checked. And while you've been lying about it, our inventory has suffered. That affects my business, my employees, my reputation. He held up a sheet with highlighted lines, attendance records, delivery logs, missing package reports tied to Daniel's routes. I brought you in as family, Malik said, but I can't run a business on lies. So as of yesterday, Daniel, you're no longer employed with us. What? Daniel exploded, jumping to his feet. You can't do that. We're family. Malik's gaze hardened. Family isn't a shield for bad behavior. My mother shot up beside him. How dare you, she cried. You're going to throw my son out after everything he's stolen? Malik interrupted, his voice rising for the first time. Yes, I am. The word stolen hung in the air. Faces around the room shifted, from sympathetic to wary to disappointed. My mother's eyes blazed. So this is what you planned, Nadia? She spat, rounding on me. You turned everyone against us. You made my son lose his job. I met her gaze, my heart hammering, but my voice steady. I didn't make him steal from his employer. I didn't make him lie about helping you while using the money for himself. And I didn't make you tell everyone I abandoned you. Those were your choices. You think you're better than us, she hissed. I think I'm finally done paying for your choices, I replied. There it was, the confrontation, not as dramatic as a movie, no storm, no shattered glass, just words, spoken plainly in a room full of people who had finally seen enough. My grandfather cleared his throat. His eyes were on my mother, not me. You have been hard on Nadia since she was a girl, he said slowly, always expecting her to fix everything. I stayed out of it because I thought it was your way. But now I see how unfair it has been. Baba, my mother began. He lifted a hand. You asked us to judge her, to condemn her. You said she turned her back on you, but you did not tell us about all the help she gave. That is not right. Murmurs again. Words like true, yes, not fair floated around. And you, Daniel, Grandpa continued, turning to my brother. You are not a child. You cannot keep wasting opportunities and expecting your sister to clean up after you. It is time you stand on your own feet. Daniel's jaw clenched. So what, everyone's against me now? Because Miss Perfect here decided to cry about her little sacrifices? A ripple of disapproval went through the room. I stood up, not to yell, but because sitting felt too small for what I needed to say. I'm not perfect, I said. I've made mistakes. I've enabled a lot of this by never saying no. But I'm done being the villain in a story where I've been breaking my back to help. I'm done letting guilt run my life. I will always care about this family, but I will not be your scapegoat, and I will not be your bank." My mother scoffed loudly. "Keep your money. When you're alone and old, don't come to us." For the first time in my life, that sentence didn't terrify me. I took a deep breath. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who only value me for what I can give them. The room erupted, not into chaos, but into low conversations, people turning to each other, reevaluating everything they thought they knew. I didn't stay for the rest of the fallout. I said goodbye to my grandfather, hugged a few cousins who squeezed my hand with quiet solidarity, and walked out. As I reached the door, I heard my mother's voice rise again behind me, shouting, "Don't you dare walk away from me, Nadia!" I didn't turn around. On the drive home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. My heart ached, not just from the confrontation, but from the knowledge that something fundamental had shifted. This was the death of the version of me they knew, the obedient daughter with no boundaries. And like any death, it hurt. But underneath the hurt, something new stirred. Peace, not total, not yet, but the first hint of it. In the weeks that followed, the social roles in my family changed. People who used to parrot my mother's complaints now paused before speaking. Some reached out privately to check on me, others stayed neutral, which was fine. I didn't need everyone on my side. I just needed to stop being the automatic villain. My mother and brother, stripped of their favorite story, found the world less sympathetic. It wasn't that people stopped helping them altogether, but the help came with questions now. Accountability. "Did you ask Daniel to get a stable job? Are you budgeting correctly? What happened to all the help Nadia gave you?" Those questions annoyed them, I'm sure, but they were the natural consequence of years of manipulation catching up with them. That was their karmic downshift. Not destitution, not homelessness, but the loss of their unquestioned moral high ground. The image they cherished cracked, and through the cracks, people saw human beings who made choices, some selfish, some harmful. As for me, I stopped checking my mother's social media. I muted the family group chat when it got too noisy. I focused on work, therapy, and small joys, cooking for myself, reading in silence, walking in the park without my phone buzzing with demands. At first, the quiet felt wrong, like I was forgetting something, like there was an unpaid bill somewhere with my name on it, not in dollars, but in guilt. Then, slowly, the quiet started to feel like freedom. One evening, months later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Nadia, it's Mom. I changed phones." I stared at the screen. After a moment, another message came. "I heard you put a deposit on a condo. Is it true?" My breath caught. I hadn't told her. I'd told a cousin, who must have told her. "Yes," I replied. "Closing is next month." Dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Congratulations," she finally wrote. No emojis, no passive-aggressive remarks, just that. I didn't know what to do with it. Gratitude, sarcasm, a trap? "Thank you," I typed back. More dots. "I still think you changed," she wrote. I smiled sadly at the screen. "I did," I answered, "for the better." She didn't respond. And that was okay. A year after that first confrontation, I stood in my own condo. Small, sunlight streaming through the windows, the smell of fresh paint instead of laundry detergent. My name alone on the deed. No debts hanging over my head that didn't belong to me. No one banging on my door demanding I sacrifice my future for theirs. My mother and I aren't close now. We speak occasionally, holidays, birthdays. Our conversations are polite, careful. There's a distance that sometimes hurts, but it's a clean hurt, not the infected wound of constant exploitation. Daniel still floats from job to job. The last I heard, he tried to start an online business and failed because he never followed through on the hard work. People help him less now, not out of cruelty, but because they finally understand that help without boundaries is just fuel for self-destruction. Do I feel bad for them sometimes? Yes. I'm not made of stone. But then I remember sitting on my apartment floor, sobbing after my own mother called me selfish for daring to want a life that wasn't on fire for her convenience. I remember years of being told my worth was measured by what I gave, not who I was. And I remember the day I chose myself. That was the real revenge. Not them losing face, not Daniel losing his job with Malik. Those were just side effects. The true revenge was refusing to be who they needed me to be in order to keep abusing me. The true revenge was becoming someone who didn't flinch when they threatened to cut me off because I built a life that didn't rely on their approval. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. I think about the girl I used to be, the one who thought love meant constant sacrifice, silence, and shrinking. I wish I could hug her, tell her she doesn't have to earn her right to exist, that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to let people face the consequences of their own choices. Karma didn't come for them like a thunderstorm. It came like a slow, steady erosion of lies, until they were left standing in the truth. And me? I didn't need karma to hit them any harder than that. Because the biggest shift wasn't in their life. It was in mine. I'm no longer the family disappointment for not being married, for not having children, for not giving away every penny I make. I am the woman who broke a generational pattern. The woman who chose herself. The woman who walked out of a living room where everyone expected her to crawl, and never crawled again. Sometimes the universe waits for you to take the first step before it delivers the rest of the karma. If this story reminded you that the best revenge is rising higher than the people who tried to break you, hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me where you're watching from. I want to see how far these stories travel.